Welcome to Experiential Design Week. I'm Eric Duncan, Senior Experiential Designer at IA Interior Architects. Each year, IA hosts Experiential Design Week to celebrate the unique role of art and design within our larger architectural practice. This year, we'll be joined in conversation by a roster of creative luminaries from around the globe to discuss their creative processes, to consider the value of experience, and ostensibly to make connections between their work and our own. For each conversation, I'll be joined by one of my colleagues at IA, each of whom bring their own unique perspective and will also ensure that I won't be the only voice you hear this week. Today, I'm fortunate to be joined by Esther Nunez, a senior designer in our Washington, D.C. studio, and we're thrilled to chat with today's guest. There's an expression I love that says, if you don't walk in with it, you don't have it. Well, today's guest has it in spades. When she and her band crushed their debut on Letterman, all he could say was that if you can't bring it like she does, get out of the business. She's an explosive performer and a hugely talented songwriter, but she's also been recognized by Forbes and Vice for the activism that's so central to her work. Her credits are endless: Kimmel, The Daily Show, and Tiny Desk, to name a few. And I can't believe I get to welcome my dear friend to Experiential Design Week. Cam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, so happy to be here virtually. My name is Cam Franklin, and I am from Houston, Texas. I call myself a woman of the world because I'm usually literally somewhere else all the time. Right now I'm in Dallas, tomorrow I'm in St. Louis, and I've had the honor of being a full-time touring artist since quitting my job in January 2015. And I have been independent the entire span of my career. And so it's been very, very interesting and exciting and soul crushing and reviving, getting to figure out how to do this better every single day. And I think I say every single one of those words with equal force, because I think it's important to know that as an entrepreneur, as a creator, that it's all a part of the process.
Once we get grown, whoa, whoa, hey, once I get you grown, whoa, whoa, hey,
So Cam and I are old friends from Houston, and as I was thinking about things to talk to you about, it occurred to me, one of the blessings of my life is that I grew up in a largely Latin neighborhood and went to school in a historically Black neighborhood called Acres Homes. It really shaped my impression of what an artist, an engineer, or a person in a position of power looked like. I'm curious to know what impact that experience had on you.
It had going to school at Carver High School for engineering and the performing arts, and I have to say that full name because it holds such a deeper meaning to me now than it did at the time. And I had only gone to that school for 1 year, my freshman year, which is the year I met Eric. And then my mom transferred me to another high school in a far more conservative part of Houston in a city called League City. And to go from a school that cared so much about the creative mind, but also the engineering mind and how they overlapped and intersected and how important art and science and technology are to one another, to then go to a place that was considered a 5A top public school and be told that we as human beings were only capable of doing one or two things. So if I wanted to do sports, I could only focus on sports. If I wanted to do music, I could only focus on that. And God forbid you have a mind that craved books or anything other than the mostly white male authors that were being presented to me in my AP English classes, after coming from a neighborhood like Carver with teachers that wanted us to be not just well-rounded, but informed, to a place where I wasn't allowed to challenge anybody. I got detention. I was in trouble all the time from being, this A plus, just free thinking teenager, the impact it had on me then versus like how I experience it all and think about it now is that it was a safe space and it was a bubble and it was something that I wish more students and honestly just more human beings got to experience, because it was a school that encouraged you to be whatever you wanted to be. You want to be an engineer? Cool, we got a class for that. You want to be an artist? Cool, we have a class for that. And if you're not the best at it, you're here because you are good at what you do, and we have people here that are willing to nurture whatever it is that's in you rather than tell. I was never told at Carver that I couldn't do anything. But then when I went to these public schools, it was almost as if they thought something was wrong with me because I was showing up with confidence. And I think that there's something to be said about giving a young child confidence, but especially during those formative years, those teenage years, because we meet so many adults that think they can't because no one's ever told them that they can't.
And I think so often we see, particularly the arts, are so undervalued in education. So that was formative for me as well. Well, anytime I see someone credited as a songwriter, I always wonder whether they're writing the lyrics or the music. Is your focus typically on one or the other, or do you do both?
I definitely do both. When I first started, I didn't understand the difference or what made a songwriter, because I thought, oh, well, I'm singing, that, oh, I'm just a singer. As I got to learn more about music and how it all works, if you learn how to master your voice, you are a musician. That is an instrument. It's just an instrument within you. And so I didn't realize I was writing songs and writing melodies when it was just me singing a cappella. But I always wrote lyrics because I was always a writer from a very, very young age. But as I've gotten older and I've learned instruments and it's become a part of what I do, I would say that for what I do creatively, it's very interchangeable for me. Like there's no writing a song without music for me, because even when I'm writing just words down or lyrics or I guess it would be a poem or something, I'm hearing a song that goes along with it. I'm hearing a melody in my head, and then as soon as I get the words out, here come the harmonies.
So you're starting to tell us a little bit of your creative process. So could you tell us if there's a specific song from the Sufferers repertoire that you would like to kind of explain what your creative journey was? Really starting at how did you come up with the idea, and then how did it make its way through the whole process and get into final production?
Yeah. So every song that I've ever done with the Sufferers has been a collaboration, starting with the band. Like we are not a one person brings the entire song and we just learn it. We have some co-writes that we've done, meaning like someone who's not in the band has written a song with us that eventually became a song that we did. And we have maybe, just me thinking about it, we have one song that is an outright us doing a song that someone else wrote, which was a co-write with Diane Warren. And outside of that, everything has been full-on collaboration, where say, if it's a song that I started, let's see, what's one I started? Mamas, on the second album, Everything Here. That started off with me just singing an a cappella. I heard it. I heard what is it? Call your mother, she just wants to hear your voice. And we had a co-writer there named Zeke Listenby, who, even though he's super talented in terms of like traditional music theory, which is not my strength, and sheet music and all these things and composing, he's one of the few songwriters I know that can do all of that, but also play by ear and sing along with a singer like me, or play along with a singer like me, where I'm hearing it, I hear the notes and I hear every part of what is on that keyboard because it lives in me, but I can't say, hey man, let's do it in C. Or at least at that time I couldn't. And for me, I realized that having someone that could speak that language with me in music, it made my process so much easier. And that was a time where the band previously only collaborated internally. So our first album, it was songs that we all had been sitting on, some that were far more developed than others, but you had this council when we first started, the band was 10 people. And so you had this council of, 9 people that were going to tell you if, hey man, this sucks. Or like, and like not on some, I'm being mean, but on some look, like it's there, but it needs to go here. And I will say that the brutal honesty of the first album is heard. Like it's a solid album, but I won't say it was our healthiest writing process for sure. The healthiest Suffers album to me is the one we're working on right now, but also the one we just put out, which is a part of this project called It Starts With Love, It Ends With Love. And that whole project is named that because that's what it takes to be a full-time artist. You have to love it. You have to end your work with love, and you have to start your work with, I'm so glad I get to do this instead of that other option in this life. And I feel like when you have that as the main ingredient to anything you're working on, it's gonna be solid as long as you finish, right? Because you're coming in with that type of intention. Now, the way that we're working right now is smarter, not harder. So I'll have the ideas that I'm still bringing in, but I'm not bringing myself the pressure of, I have to write 20 songs. No, I'm in my mid-career level. I know you get Diane Warren on an album, no one's gonna tell me no ever again, ever. Like, cool, you don't wanna write a song with me? No problem, it's fine, it's totally fine. Anyway, for the people that are not at this part of their career yet, there's millions of writers. And so don't put the pressure on yourself. Bring somebody else in, because what happens is I'll have my 5 or 6 ideas, right, that come in. My bandmates might have their 5 or 6 ideas. Then these people that have been wanting to work with us for years, or people we get introduced through our teams or whatever, they'll come in with their songs, and then it becomes a battle of the fittest for the songs, right? We are in charge, so we'll always be precious about like 2 or 3 where it's like, I don't care what song makes the album, but this one, I'm dying on this hill with this song, and so like that's how it is sometimes. But it then opens the floor for almost like an old school listening room or screening session where it's all these people, not just in the band, like our friends, our most judgy family members, like anybody on our team that hates everything, like those are the people I want listening to these demos. And so we usually have 20, and we'll go through and make a little survey and let everybody, give us their 2 cents, brutally honest, and usually it's never like, this is awful, it's usually like, this is the one, or this is the hit. And we did this on our last 2 projects, and every single time the songs that, we were rooting for, those were usually the ones that other people were rooting for. But then there's always one where we weren't even like, we're like, if it makes it whatever. And then you have like all these people that would be like, no, this song, this one right here. And you're like, really, that one? Oh, you know what? Fine, you win. And that's the thing about the art that you put out into the world, right? You have no say in how it gets consumed. So I think that stage is pretty important for what we do.
This has been an incredible look at your creative process. You talked about the brutal honesty that you and your bandmates have with each other. I'm curious to know, have you always been able to accept criticism, or is that something you learned along the way?
No. No, I was definitely like, all right, I'm gonna go cry now. Not with them. Like, it's very respectful. Like, we have a very respectful space. But at a certain point in your career, for whatever it is you do, like, all right, this is hot. I'm like ready to go share it, right? And so usually it's just us constantly like impressing one another or like being excited about what we're doing. The things that would usually get shot down were the things that usually weren't for like what we were doing, or the things that weren't really focused. Like it was almost like, is this for this? Is this, and it wasn't, it was never bad, right? It was just, is this what we really are trying to do right now? And or this sounds like somebody else's song, like an artist that's out right now. Are we trying to copy paste? Or are we trying to figure out who we are? Because it could be so easy to try and just, oh, well, it's working for them. Let's do that. But it's, for us, we came out with a clear vision of what we were trying to do. And that was a big band that was bringing original songs that were influenced by the genres of music that we liked. So ska, reggae, rock and roll, soul, jazz. And it ended up going into this crazy place of where it is now, where, it's dang near pop music sometimes, but I'm just grateful that we get to do this the way that we want to do it. And in terms of just the the creative process and the honesty that we share with one another now, I feel like it's just a part of the process. Like, hey man, it's not done yet. Hey, we need to try a different mix. Hey, it's almost there. It's almost there, like we had a song that didn't make the last album that, some of my bandmates got pissed at me, but I was like, I'm not feeling what I need to feel. And it was because I knew that they didn't record the parts together. It was such, if y'all had heard the song, you'd be like, this is great, this is fine. But I'm definitely a feelings person. One thing I got from that psycho high school I went to after Carver was 2 choral directors who I did not always agree with on most of anything, but they did teach me a few things about how the correlation between watercolors and making music in terms of dynamics are like this. How you can ruin entire watercolor by going on too hard with it. And how sometimes if you just take your time and you keep it light, you can get there. And it's like that with the music. It's like if you forcing it or you just rush through it, y'all can tell if something just gets thrown at you. That's why a lot of people complain about the things that they don't like about whatever's happening audibly. But if you just give it a little bit more seasoning, a little bit more care, it ends up turning out in a completely different way. And every time I've made a call like that, or one of my bandmates has made a call like it's not right, when we take the time to do what we talk about, it always turns out to where we're all happy with the end result.
I understand that there's a lot of crossover with our work as well in the creative process, right? And sometimes you're just in a hurry to get something done, or you're moving really fast. And it's good to take that breath and step back and be like, is this really what we all want? Is this really, true to our creative process and what we're trying to do? And I find it, it can be difficult sometimes to put the pause, right? Because there's other things that you have going on. But I love that when you do, and you can all just take a breath, and sometimes that helps get the ego out too, right?
Absolutely. Respect the deadline, but also respect the work.
Do you ever wanna go back to you and me? 'Cause sometimes I need to go back to you and me. Did you ever wanna go back?
Well, for anyone who may be unaware, NPR hosts a very cool concert series called Tiny Desk. And anytime I see a list of the best Tiny Desk performances that doesn't include the Suffers, I just don't bother. In that performance, you tell a touching story about an old job you had. And I wonder if you can tell us what you were doing before this became your life.
Yes, I honestly, I like when I get asked this question, because people love treating me like I've been a full-time artist my whole life and not like I ever had a real job. So when I start asking them questions about equity and pay equity and data, they treat me like an idiot. but they don't know that I actually used to be a gas and power trade analyst at an investment bank for 7.5 years. And, data is my thing. And so now they say every job prepares you for the next one, right? I gave zero shits about working in oil and gas. But now I realize, in that world of economics, I now am hyper focused on music economics, where the data is extremely lacking and the pay equity gap is laughable. The last strike we had was in the 40s. I'm so grateful that I did that first. I'm so grateful that I did work in that environment and that I did get to learn so much about working in an international corporate business environment, because I now understand a world of how we are actually supposed to treat each other in an office, how we're actually supposed to treat each other as peers in an industry that likes to treat you like a living garbage fire if you're not making money for other people sometimes.
No, you really are incredibly prolific. You've got the Suffers, you had a solo career, you had Bayou City Comeback Chorus, other incredible collaborations. To be honest, it seems like you just never ever stop and that your creativity is just absolutely boundless. So do you ever experience, as a creative who's constantly going, constantly doing stuff, do you ever get the block, right? Like that creative block, you're like, oh crap. And then how do you move past that creative block?
I have been very lucky, I will say, in that I haven't experienced very many creative blocks. But I will say that even though it appears as if I'm go, what is on the internet is what I choose to share with y'all. I am very, very, very much so a boundary and vacation enthusiast. To me, vacation and taking breaks, to me, just staying at home for 3 days on your couch can be a vacation as far as I'm concerned. But taking breaks, especially after big projects, is what allows me to function at the capacity in which I do. So I had a very, very large nervous breakdown in 2018. And it was because I was not stopping to do much of anything. I was running myself ragged into the ground. I had to let go of a lot of people on my team so that I could go in the direction in which I am now and exist in the way that I am now. And I got to really learn how my industry worked and how dark it could be when you weren't in a state of shining star or ascent, right? And talking to my peers who were having absolutely insane moments in their careers, I would ask, like, how are you finding balance? How are you able to do this? I always give credit to my good friend Laura Lee from Krungben for being the first person to really tell me about taking a break after every tour, because no one had ever told me that. No one had ever told me to take care of myself. I give kudos to my librarian at that second school, because she asked me, she's like, what career are you trying to have? I was like, I want to be a federal judge or a rock star. She's like, well, we have books for both of these things. And so I am so grateful for reading these books in this library when I'd get the attention. To me, it was just celebrity gossip back then. I loved biographies, right? But I'd always read about artists having breakdowns, artists not being able to take rest, and it all started to click when it was finally my time. And I was thinking like, oh, well, I'm not famous. I don't need a vacation. I don't need a whatever. I read an article that basically talked about, I guess, like the music data and like when you could financially at the peak of your career take a break. And it was something around 7 years. And I'm like, 7 years, I'm not gonna die doing this. So what I'm going to do is take care of myself and then come back. I'm gonna take care of myself, replenish, and then come back. And being in a band with 9 guys for as long as I was and the quarters that I was, they got to see the highs. We got to see the highs, lows, ups, downs, ins, and outs of one another. Making myself the priority as an artist, as a creator, as a human being, I was awful. As an extreme micromanager, and I attest that to being so worried all the time, being so needing to be in control all the time, to now being like, girl, I don't know where we going. Did you ask Gray, my tour manager? I don't know. And like, and I'm glad to not know. I'm grateful that I wasn't on any of these advancement emails, because it means that I can finally trust someone to help me. And if you can trust someone to help you, that means you can go on vacation and not be the psychopath at work that everyone hates. And trust me, I learned from my corporate job that used to force us to take 2-week vacations, because if you don't go on vacation, what happens?
Well, Cam, I'd be remiss not to ask you about your work in country music as well. So
Yeah.
You have that incredible new single, Your Girl Didn't Listen, and you regularly perform with the Black Opry. So your portfolio is soul, it's Tejano, it's punk, it's ska, it's country. Your creativity must constantly be sparked by this medley of genres.
It is spiked, and from a creative perspective, it's been a hard pill to swallow on the marketing side of how to share that with multiple audiences, especially when you have some audiences that are not trying to hear the other genres, right? And so it's why I've been doing a soft launch of these other projects the last few years. And so The Suffers turns 13 next year. And that is, you know, soul, jazz, all of that, mainly love songs, but we incorporate a lot of other stuff into the themes. And my solo stuff, I've been calling it risky folk recently, because I've been writing about a lot of the social issues that are impacting us right now. I released Your Girl Didn't Listen last year as a light introduction into what I'm about to start doing. And that song is about greenouts. Everybody knows what a blackout is. Greenouts are exactly the same.
Baby, baby, why didn't I listen? With my weed doctor, she gave me the prescription. Baby, baby, THC is hidden, and ooh, feeling good because your girl didn't listen. I didn't listen.
This is about me not listening to my friend Margot Price, who told me to take a bite of a cancer cookie her grandma gave her. You know, I hope that my lesson and my song could be a disclaimer to anybody that's trying to know their dose. And so now the music is going into much heavier topics, and I wanted to have this space as Cam Franklin, as a solo artist. My next single is called Byrd and Shepard, and it's about the history of the National Hate Crime Bill, which turns 15 in October. And it's about the murders of Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr., who were both murdered in 1998. Matthew for being gay, James for being Black, and living in a state that is working so hard to ban books, to erase history. The job of the artist, to me, is to share what is happening in real time in our society, and I don't want to see something like that ever happen again. And so all the proceeds from that song are actually going to go to both of their family foundations who have heard the song and have supported it, and I'm very grateful for that. But that's where I'm about to go, and creatively, it's not very sexy to talk about tough subjects and to be honest and to be real. But I've met a lot of artists over the last few years, especially that were the risk takers of their era. Like I played with Mavis Staples last December, and she told me to put the truth in my music because I was dealing with some shut up and sing issues at my shows, because I was one of these artists that would, you know, stop and talk about it. And now, you know, taking her advice, I was like, man, I can make education catchy because of how I write. So I'm going to do that. And, you know, meeting Katie Lang a couple years ago and having her talk about, you know, how people were giving her all these awards, these like Trailblazer awards and all of this. But when she was in her prime, we saw how they used to treat her and talk about her in the media. And, you know, I've just kind of accepted, you know, that if I want to talk about these topics and I want to bring a bit more focus onto what's happening to us, it's going to be a little bumpy, but I'm going to have a good time and I'm going to look good.
Well, and you're definitely taking the sort of spoonful of sugar approach. These are obviously heavy subjects, but you're cloaking them in these really melodic, hypnotic melodies. You know, I heard a preview of your new single, Shepard and Byrd, yesterday, and I was blown away. You would never know that you were delivering this powerful message if you weren't really kind of paying attention to the lyrics.
That's the trick.
So it sounds like you really are trying to blend, you know, the social and cultural themes that you're experiencing or you're seeing into your music and your art. You know, is there, and it sounds like that might be a little bit new that you're playing with and starting to experience. You know, why is that so important? And is there a specific reason that kind of now you're really starting to truly blend your art and your activism together?
Oh, it's always been slowly snuck in there in like little ways, you know, and sometimes in much clearer ways than others. On the Suffers album, this last one is probably more politically forward and calling out of culture than the other two definitely were. Like the song Diane wrote is called Bitches Gotta Get Paid, and it's about the pay equity gap.
Say what you say. I say, bitches gotta get paid. Let's get this shit straight. Let's get this shit straight. Hey, hey, hey.
And as I've been seeing some of the SAG-AFTRA, strike stuff happening, Allison Janney like posted the song on her Instagram, and I was like, this is not what I was expecting today, but this is great and fine and lovely. But we also had a song called How Do We Heal on there that talks about all of the Black people that have been murdered by the police and how we as Black folks, how we are supposed to respond at all when it just keeps happening over and over again. And we're now almost getting numb to seeing ourselves murdered in 4K at this point. And I, again, was trying not to put all of that in the Suffers. And so I launched Bayou City Comeback Chorus because the school that I had all these issues with and the choral teachers I had all these issues with taught me chamber music and chamber harmonies. And so I've been taking that skill set and instead applying it to psychedelic funk and R&B music. I mean, it's become something that I've realized creatively. And when I was talking about the marketing of it, I get so much more work done because I've had to learn that my creative mind is constantly going. And if I really want the work to get out and I really want it to get out in a productive way without it being painful every time, I have to just find the right wheelhouse for it right now, right? And I get crazy ideas, true Gemini, but like trying to keep this focused, right? And so for me, if it doesn't go for Suffers, Cam Franklin, or Bayou City Comeback Chorus, I now have two other projects that, because I'm always trying to up the skill set. And if AI or the aliens really are trying to replace us, like I want to make sure that I'm looked at as an asset.
So that's a great segue. You know, technology is transforming our processes by the minute. I'm curious to know whether you've experimented with ChatGPT or AI in any of your writing.
I have not at all. I have friends that they love it. Like they're like all up in it. They're making art in there and like just expanding what they do already. I'm at a point in my career, in terms of the technology side of it, where I'm learning still a lot about how to record, about the engineering side of what I do, but AI is already integrated in a lot of that. So like, while I don't have it in my songwriting side, I use AI constantly when it comes to me producing music. When I, like, even though I play guitar and really shitty piano, I can go into Logic Pro and, you know, build beats in there, and I can put a whole band together with the loops. And then if I want to hear what a mix or master sounds like, I can download apps like the Isotope Suite, Nectar, and I can mix and master an entire record at home. Is that what I want to do? No. But, you know, if I'm dealing with a money shortage or something on a project and I just need to get some stuff out, or if I'm just trying to learn, which is more so what I've been trying to do with these other two projects, like, hey, these are two projects, they don't have my name on them, they're just gonna go on the internet so that I can practice what this sounds like. AI has made that not even 10 times, like literally 1,000 times faster, because there are all of these automated processes. It down to like, if I wrote a dance song and I was like, man, I want this to have the same levels as Heated by Beyonce, I can download Heated, put it into the app, and then AI will listen to Heated, listen to my song, and then bring the levels into comparative levels, so that even, like, it's not going to be Heated, but the volume will be that, to where if you're listening to Heated and then you change it to my song, you ain't gonna have to do nothing to your radio, because the AI from Logic Pro and from the Nectar plugin will have already said everything for me.
Going back to songwriting for just a second, then what role do personal experiences play in your songwriting? Like, if you're writing a love song, for instance, is it a cinematic homage to love, or are you generally writing about something you've experienced?
It depends on my mood. I like the last few weeks, I was seeing someone, and usually I don't write that many songs about one person, so like maybe he was a muse or something, but that was very different for me to have, like, man, I'm gonna write like 4 songs about this person I've known for a short amount of time. He was awesome, but it didn't work. But I've had people that I've dated for years where I didn't write anything about them, which is kind of, but you know, when it comes to a lot of my other stuff, it's based around my friends' experiences and people watching. I'm very into, I'll go to Starbucks, and yes, I'm listening to you. And if you tell them like a crazy story, like, I'm like, man, you know, like whatever, you know. And usually it's about, I write a lot of songs about falling in love versus like we're in the thick of it. And I've had a lot of breakup songs, but recently I haven't been wanting to write them, even though like I could. I feel like there's other things I want to write about. And so on the Suffers album, we have the breakup songs and the love songs that we wrote a few years back. And so right now the focus has been more so on continuing the theme of pay equity and the theme of loving what you do as a creator.
So we've found so many, I think, as we've been chatting with you, so many similarities between what you do creatively in your art and what we do creatively in our art. And you know, from the design perspective, a lot of our focus really is creating sense of community and collaborative spirit. You as a performer, you know, you get that with your band, but I would also be really curious, you know, the communal experience after venues reopened, after, God forbid I say it, the pandemic, right? Our lost years. What was it like when you started performing again and you're back in front of real people and feeding off of that energy?
It was equal parts awesome and terrifying. Our first show back, which I feel was Art Car Ball in Houston, was outdoor and it was lovely and we had a great time and it was a really good energy and feeling, right? But our first tour back, when our album came out, I want to say that was 2022, worst tour we've ever had. And I will say, like, the worst year of touring we have ever had. To say that the market was oversaturated, sure. That was one part of it. There were supply issues, so we didn't have our vinyl, and it was like months behind, right? So we were touring without that, and then it was people not hearing about our shows, and the venues were limited because so many of them had closed during COVID, and so it's like everybody was fighting to even get the dates, and even now a lot of venues still haven't reopened. And so I will say right now, our last round of touring that we did this year was much better, but it was a lot lighter and a lot more calculated because of that year. And I feel like there are a lot of bands you will not see come back. There are a lot of businesses you will not see come back. And I feel we're very lucky because we had a career that was already established before COVID, and we never stopped. We kept doing live streams and all these other things during the pandemic, but the nature of our business has changed dramatically to where I know we are putting much more of a focus on just making music and making tons of music and less of a focus on when we're going to do a next big tour. And that might not be until our next album comes out. And that's just fine with us because the band hadn't really braked the way that we did during COVID ever. And recently, it's been more about the love of what we do rather than how are we going to eat this month? How are we going to pay the bills this month? And for myself, it's been, okay, I know I still want to tour in a much heavier way as a solo artist. What does that look like for me right now? What does this vision of my marketing strategies, what do all of these things look like? And touring solo versus touring with the band is night and day, but my appreciation for the road hasn't wavered at all. Like, it's where I love being the most, and performing in different places every night and getting to share these original songs is my favorite thing to do.
Could this be? Could this be love? Could this be? Could this be love? Could this be? Could this be love? Could this be? Could this be love?
In my introduction, I mentioned that expression, if you don't walk in with it, you don't have it. I remember an early show of yours where you told a somewhat lighter audience, if none of y'all came tonight, we were going to put on a show for the bartenders. Oftentimes we find ourselves sharing work that feels incredibly personal, and it can be easy to let self-doubt overtake you. Can you talk to us about developing that level of confidence and how you always seem to maintain it?
Sometimes confidence for me comes in the form of, a different lipstick shade, or like getting braids, or dyeing my hair a different color, but it mainly comes from the practice of what I do and knowing that I'm doing something that no one else is going to do the way I do it. No one else is going to connect with people the way that I am connecting with these people in regards to my show. And so, like, trusting that I've put in the work on this side, and that whoever there is spending that money, they're there to be entertained. And I will say that, like, the self-doubt is just a part of the process. Like, at one point, it doesn't really matter, I think, what level you're at. Even if you are the most confident person in the world, you are going to have moments of, or, who let me do this? Like, who hired me? Like, what am I doing here? And, like, God forbid you get promoted and you get more money and more responsibility, and, like, you're having a day where you're just like, who let me be in charge? Do they know what's happening? But then you realize, and you look back and you realize, like, damn, I've been really training for this. I've been preparing for this. I've had people around me making sure that I'm here. And like, I remind myself of that. I've been singing since I was 5. Anybody that's had anything to say about my voice doesn't sing. Like, it's never someone that actually sings. And coming from so many moments and places, and now existing in a place where I play a show, I'm going to have choir nerds at my show. There's no higher compliment as a singer than to have the freaking soprano 2s and the, tenors there doing this one, and then singing along and like harmonizing and judging and like, but not in a negative way. They're there because they're there to learn, and it is exhilarating, and it makes me forget all of the nonsense that I used to feel about myself. But that's going to look different to everybody, right? For a long time, my band, we just wouldn't believe. We're like, who are these people? Like, who are these people? And now we're at a stage where it's usually those younger artists, those people that are just getting into it, that teach us, oh, you're at that level now. My horn players know, especially because they've been in the band so long, oh, here comes your trumpet player fans, here comes your band kids that, have been told that this is not a career option for them, that they follow you. They want to know what type of horn you have. They want to know your technique. They want to know all of that. And I say all of that as a collective experience, because self-doubt can be something that can be experienced in the community, not just with one person. And you have to lift each other up and remind one another that y'all are growing together. So like the people you start with, like, if y'all don't keep that in mind and look back on the projects that you've completed, and you're always just looking to the future of what's next, it's hard to realize the accomplishment that happens. It's hard to acknowledge the growth that's happening in real time if there's only focus on, the next quarter or the numbers or, who is having the best individual moment versus the best team, and me as an individual artist versus me with the band, like it's two different game plans, two different talks, two different conversations. And I'm grateful that I've experienced both, because it's more like a competence practice rather than like, if I'm feeling off, 9 times out of 10, I need to go eat something or I need to go walk or something. But
that truly took my breath away. I'd never thought about self-doubt being a kind of communal experience as well.
It's contagious. Like if you're ever in the middle of a project and you start questioning, especially a group project, and one of you starts questioning, then everybody.
And then you get that like stagnant and everyone pauses and you're like, oh shit. So I think one thing you said that really resonated with me, and you said it also with the vacation thing, like a reoccurring theme that has come out of this with you that I'm hearing is like, just take the time to pause, take the time to look back, take the time to look forward, take the time to celebrate, take the time to rework. And we move so fast nowadays. And if you don't move super, super fast, everyone makes you feel like you're falling behind or you're becoming irrelevant, which is completely the opposite of what is happening to you, right? You're taking the time to slow down and you're taking the time to celebrate. You're taking the time to learn. And that's actually propelling you even further than you would have been if you had just tried to like nose to the ground and like grind.
Well, so I get a lot of secondhand joy when others experience something fantastic. And I'm curious to know, when was the last time you were awed?
This morning. Oh my gosh, this morning. My good friends, this duo called the War and Treaty. And I'll always have people say, I haven't heard of them. I go, I'm sure you've heard of Tanya Blount. And they're like, I haven't heard of Tanya Blount. I go, have you seen Sister Act 2? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, Tanya's the woman singing His Eye is on the Sparrow with Lauryn Hill, the alto. And she looks exactly the same, just with longer hair. Anyway, her and her husband started from the bottom in country music, and they've worked their way up, and they got their first CMA nomination this morning for Country Duo of the Year. And I was like, yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so listen to the War and Treaty. They're amazing. And yeah, it's
there
great.
you go. That's awesome. Well, Esther, when was the last time you were awed?
So it can be so hard to get away, right? It can be so hard to disconnect yourself. And so what I've been finding is that the times that I truly just am left speechless or feeling very just out of my own experiences and like, oh, is when I scuba dive. It is just
that.
this whole different way of looking at, like, you breathe oxygen differently. Like you're underwater. Your weight is different. The way you move is different. You're moving in 4 dimensions. You're not moving in 3 dimensions. And it's such a great way for me to get out of my own head and look at something that feels like a completely different universe and realize it makes me feel very small, but in all the best ways, right? Because then I'm able to be like, the world isn't all on my shoulders. Like, everything is okay. I don't have to take everything so seriously. Like, look at all of the beauty that's around me that not everyone gets to experience. And I get this. Like, I actually get the opportunity to go do this that not many people will. And every time I do it, I leave the water and I leave the vacation just completely mind blown. And all I want to do is talk about it, which I know is very annoying. So now I zip.
No, that sounds incredible.
It's great. I've never scuba dived before.
If you ever get the chance, it's great. I mean, even what you hear is so different. Like, you don't hear anything except your own breathing and bubbles. Like, that's it. It's so great. It's love it. What about you, Eric? Come on, you can't ask the question and then not answer the question.
Well, the last time I was like really awed was a few nights ago. We just saw the Barbie movie. This sounds a little flippant compared to your incredible responses.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, Cam, anyone who's saying this movie is an 8 out of a 10, a 9 out of a 10 is insane. This movie is 100 out of 100. I think it is a pitch perfect movie. I laughed out loud. I don't know how many number of times. The production design is incredible. I mean, it's a total feast for the eyes. The performances these actors deliver are probably the best of their careers. I mean, this movie is incredible. So that was my moment of awe.
I love it.
Well, you can pre-save Cam's upcoming single, Byrd and Shepard, at the link in our show notes. I just heard a preview and it's incredible. As a fan and as a friend, I really can't convey the joy this conversation has given me. This has been such a unique privilege, and I hope you know how thankful I am for it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thanks for joining us for Experiential Design Week, an annual series by IA Interior Architects. If you enjoyed today's discussion, and if you appreciate great design, we invite you to visit interiorarchitects.com/EDW for more conversations with the incredible creatives we admire. While you're there, you can learn more about IA and discover the remarkable work our studios are producing around the globe.